Today, we're diving into something absolutely fascinating: the astonishing ways animals memorize, judge, and actually react to specific human faces. We tend to think of ourselves as the main characters in our environment, right? We just assume that to the wildlife around us, we blend into this interchangeable background scenery. But the science and some truly mind-blowing real-world stories suggest something completely different. The animal kingdom is watching you way closer than you think.
So, let me ask you, have you ever been walking outside and felt this sudden, inexplicable sense that an animal was keeping its eyes firmly locked right on you? Well, let's start with a mystery that unfolded on a college campus. Imagine a guy taking a simple, quiet walk outside doing literally nothing to provoke the local wildlife. Suddenly, out of nowhere, he finds himself being screamed at and dive-bombed by a massive flock of crows.
And this wasn't just some random act of nature. Get this. Out of the 53 crows he passed on that campus walk, a staggering 47 of them aggressively broke off to come after him. Why? Well, it turns out they weren't actually after the man himself, they were after the rubber mask he had on his face. If he took the mask off, they ignored him completely. But the second he put it back on, the screaming began all over again. Their beef? 8 years prior, during a totally separate experiment on how crows recognize faces, someone wearing that exact rubber mask trapped 7 crows and let them go unharmed just minutes later. That was the whole thing. But those crows filed that specific rubber face away as public enemy number 1.
Which brings us to part 1, the animal grudge.
Okay, let's dive into exactly how a single flock of birds manages to hold a grudge for longer than most human friendships even last. What's truly terrifying here is that many of the crows attacking that mask weren't even alive during the original experiment 8 years ago. The first crows that were trapped literally taught their chicks which face to attack, and then those chicks taught theirs. You see, when one crow starts screaming, the others fly in to see what all the fuss is about, and they learn the enemy right then and there on the spot. The hatred for that specific mask was handed down generation after generation, almost like this dark family heirloom. Most of those attacking birds had absolutely no idea why they hated that face, but they knew exactly what to do when they saw it.
Moving right along to part 2, unlikely face readers.
Now, you might be thinking, sure, crows are incredibly smart, but what about the rest? Well, this intense, laser-focused memory isn't just limited to famously clever birds. It turns up in animals we often just write off as being too simple. Take the common pigeon, for example, often unfairly dismissed as a flying rat. Researchers went to a park where 2 people fed the same flock of ordinary, wild pigeons. One person was a gentle feeder, and the other constantly chased the birds away. Then, the researchers switched roles. To make it even trickier for the birds, they completely swapped jackets to reverse the colors. Did it trick them? Not even a little bit. The pigeons easily kept their distance from the specific researcher who had previously chased them. They completely ignored the clothing. They were reading the person's actual face. And it gets even more incredibly precise with larger mammals. Researchers showed a group of horses just one single photograph of a person making an angry face. Just one photo. Hours later, that exact same person walked into the stable in the flesh, but this time they were perfectly calm, with a completely neutral expression. The horses were absolutely not fooled. They watched that specific person warily, turning to study them specifically with their left eye, which, by the way, is the side of their brain wired straight to handle threats. From just one photograph of a bad mood, before a single word was even spoken, the horses decided to keep a very close eye on them. So you might think, surely a creature with almost no brain at all in its head would be safe to ignore you, right? Well, think again. Let's look at the octopus. It's basically an alien right here on Earth. No bones, 3 hearts, blue blood, and a brain that's mostly spread out through its arms. It has a mind that's nothing like ours. Yet, it still possesses the very human trait of petty revenge. Listen to this. In one experiment, a tank of octopuses met 2 keepers in completely identical uniforms. One fed them, the other poked them with a bristly stick. Very quickly, the octopuses started reaching out for the nice keeper and visibly shrinking away from the mean one. And then they actually learned to shoot a targeted, hard jet of water specifically at the staff member they disliked. In another lab, an octopus took against one specific staff member for seemingly no reason at all and soaked her with a blast of water right down the neck every single time she walked past. No way, right? Let's shift gears to part 3, memory cuts both ways. So far, every story we've looked at has been about a grudge, but memory cuts both ways. Let's jump back to our friends the crows for a second, because they also keep lists of people they love. In Seattle, a 4-year-old girl named Gabi started feeding her local crows every single day like clockwork.
They didn't just recognize her face, they actively paid her back. The crows began leaving her these specific, incredible little treasures on her feeder: beads, buttons, an earring, polished glass, and even a tiny piece of metal stamped with the word best, kind of like half of a friendship charm. And get this, when Gabi's mother lost a camera lens cap in a nearby alley, days later, the crows actually found it and returned it right to the feeder. To those crows, Gabi was not just some random kid. She was a specific face worth keeping. This takes us to part 4, the longest memories. So just how long can a wild animal retain your image in its mind? Are we talking a few days? A month? For that answer, we have to look at the animals closest to us. Chimpanzees and bonobos read faces almost exactly the way humans do. In one absolutely incredible study, one bonobo successfully picked out relatives she hadn't seen in a staggering 26 years. 26 years. That is officially the longest face memory ever recorded in any animal besides us. Even when half a human face was hidden behind a mask, apes have recognized specific humans they literally haven't seen in decades. A face you show them once can sit crystal clearly in their head for a quarter of a century. And finally, part 5, a face never forgotten. All of this builds to the deepest memory of all, one that isn't just about survival or holding a grudge, but about unconditional love. Let's travel back to 1969. 2 young Australians bought a lion cub they named Christian, raising him right in the middle of the city, actually in the basement of a furniture shop. But of course, as you'd guess, a lion doesn't stay small. So they did the hardest thing imaginable. They gave him a wildlife, handing him over to a conservationist in Kenya to teach this city-raised cub how to be a real apex predator. A year passed. Christian was now a fully wild lion, leading his own pride and hunting his own food, hundreds of miles from his basement upbringing. The 2 men flew all the way back to Africa to see if he would even remember them. Now, everyone warned them it was totally pointless, and honestly, super dangerous. A year is a really long time in the wild. Christian was a grown wild male now. He might not know them, and he very well might charge. The men climbed onto a rock and just waited. Christian came forward slowly, his head held low, studying them exactly the way a wild lion studies a stranger. For a moment, nobody even breathed. And then, suddenly, Christian stopped pretending to be wild. He broke into a dead run, rose up onto his back legs, threw his massive paws over their shoulders, and joyfully pushed his head right into their faces, literally like a giant, overgrown house cat. He knew them instantly. An entire year of turning wild hadn't erased a single thing about the 2 men who raised him. Because Christian had decided they were family, even his wild lionesses let the men walk right up. It's just a beautiful testament to the power of memory. So, what should you take away from all of this? Look, to almost everyone you pass today on the street, you're just a face in a crowd. But to the animal kingdom, you are never just interchangeable scenery. A crow might know your face. A pigeon might know your walk. The kindness you showed an animal years ago might still be waiting to be repaid. And frankly, so might the cruelty. So the next time you step outside and feel like you're being watched, remember this. You are a specific person being quietly judged. Somewhere out there, an animal knows your face, and they are keeping score. What kind of score are they keeping for you?